What's up, everybody? It's the Power Rankings Podcast, aka the Power Rankings Show. I'm your host, Elliot Harrison. I'm pleased to be joined, as always, by @Marcus_Mosher. How are you, sir?
Doing well, Elliot. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing actually quite well. I was enjoying talking offline with you about some John Candy movies that were absolutely amazing. But was it Uncle Buck, the one where he drives like the real POS car?
Funny story. My mom and I, we watched that movie on Sunday afternoon together. It was so good.
Yeah. Uncle Buck. What was it on, like TNT?
No, it was on AMC.
Like movies?
It was AMC. It was so good. There's so many quotable lines from that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what's the one where he takes his family on like the beach vacation?
I don't know.
Golly, I can't think of it now. It was before he got huge, because he did National Lampoon's Vacation, when he was the security guard. When he goes, "Sorry, folks, park's closed."
Yep.
And then like
Uncle Buck, World. Yeah.
Uncle Buck was like a year and a half later, and then there was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was like 87, and then The Great Outdoors was around 87. I mean, he did like a series of movies in this finite amount of time.
Summer Rental. I got it.
Summer Rental. Yes, that's it. But that's before he became big time. Now he was, getting there.
I would just assume that your favorite John Candy movie is Spaceballs.
Now that was 88. See, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's another one. What's the one? Oh, and then Home Alone. Remember, he was the leader of the
Polka Polka Polka. Yeah.
The Polish polka band. Yeah. Oh man. Okay. I don't know what my favorite John Candy movie is. I'm gonna have to really think about that. But yeah, Spaceballs, he was half man, half dog. He was Mog. Yeah.
And he's also in Stripes. We can't forget about Stripes.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, he was genuinely concerned when they ran into Pizza the Hut. Okay. So on to football matters. So obviously it's the off season. We are in the throes of the off season. I asked Marcus, do you want to talk about some topical news? Marcus goes, no. That was the conversation pretty much. And then he dribbled on about something about Baker Mayfield. And that was
You did ask me if I wanted to talk about anything. I did watch an old game today that I wanted your thoughts on just really quickly. Are you good for this? I watched Cowboys-Dolphins 1999, the Thanksgiving game. It was Marino and Aikman's first game back after both of those guys had injuries.
Yeah, so Jason Garrett played for Aikman that year a little bit. That was really the beginning of the end for Dan Marino. He looked awful in that game, where he just couldn't get the ball down the field. I think he was having some shoulder problem or what it was, but early in 99, Marino looked really good. He had a crazy duel with the young Peyton Manning in Miami, and he and then man, somewhere he just hit the wall, but that was year 17 for him. So yeah,
He was old. By the way, Dexter Coakley, 2 interceptions in that game. Just wanted to point that out.
I was going to ask you, I remember one of them, Marino tried to get the ball out there. It was horrifically underthrown, and Coakley intercepted underneath, and Jimmy Johnson, who was Miami's coach at the time, just looked at Marino like, the heck was that? The reason I remember that so well is I had just moved to LA, and my buddy had also just moved here from Dallas. And I mean, just moved. Like, this was like a week after we moved that game. And you were watching it at, somebody's house, and they were showing, how they always show the aerial view of like downtown, wherever you're at. We both got so homesick, as soon as we saw the aerial view, because we didn't want to be in LA for Thanksgiving, like you want to be home
with your tofu turkey and all that kind of, listen, I get it.
Oh boy, here we go. Here comes the old rural flyover state,
gluten-free mashed potatoes,
dogging on the LA crowd.
Listen, you
the
told
LA
me
crowd
how much
comes back with their demeaning chats about your state.
Listen, you told me how much Thanksgiving sucks in LA, so it's fine.
Man, there are a lot of things to like about Los Angeles, but Thanksgiving ain't one of them. If I could Frankenstein Texas and California, I would. There's so many things I like about both. And there's things that are annoying about both. It's the way it goes. But, people appreciate your rural superiority over all the heathens in LA, I'm sure.
We just have good sweet potatoes here. That's the difference.
Yeah, I know. You guys think that people on the West Coast have no character, and people think in LA, everyone that lives in a rural area goes to work on horseback. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. Gosh, I wish I could just get people together and go, everything y'all think about each other is so off, So
can we talk about Matt Rule
more? What's that?
Can we talk about Matt Rule, please?
Oh yeah. I was gonna say there's nothing I love more than the political dissension too. I love it so much. And then I was gonna say, but something that Marcus and I had no dissension on, none, zero, is we ranked the coaches this week. I told you guys that we were gonna do something that dealt with all 32 teams every Tuesday with Brinks and with our rundown. And this week I wanted to do the coaches, and Marcus and I, when it came to picking the 32nd coach, how long did we debate that?
Not long at all.
I would say 2.8 seconds.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Yeah. So we're going to rank the coaches today because Marcus is lazy. He doesn't want to talk about news or keep track of anything, which I should say before we get into the coaches. Look, whoever's playing third down plays in mini camp for a team at running back is not news. It's so silly. So-and-so dropped 5 balls in mini camp practice. I mean, this has absolutely nothing to do with what's going to be happening in the regular season in October. It's just people are so desperate for clicks and likes. Oh my gosh. Does it not drive you a little crazy?
Yes. Partly because I don't think the beat writers always know what they're looking for, right? We've been suckered into these guys all the time that, hey, they look really good in minicamp and training camp. And then you get to the season and they might not even be on the team because they don't really know what they're looking for, right? They're just looking for guys that have good athleticism or good speed, but that stuff doesn't necessarily really matter in the actual regular season. So I'd take every bit of news that you get from mini camps, OTAs, training camps with a grain of salt, because the person watching might not even know what they're really watching.
Yeah. And I'm not going to get into all the reasons why some of what you're seeing doesn't mean that that's where the guys are going to play. Sometimes they need work, but I don't want to waste valuable time on our podcast discussing that. But yeah, as Marcus says, take it all with a grain of salt. I would also take our rankings of the coaches with a grain of salt because
I wouldn't. I think we're great here. These are the best rankings we've done. The good thing is there's literally no disagreement for us across the board here. So these are why
very little.
Yeah,
very little. I would say at most 2 ranking spots, 3 ranking spots that we disagreed. So we did these together. So this isn't Marcus's list. It's not my list. It's our list. Let us know what you think. We'll start at 32 on the way down. If you're watching along on YouTube, you see the Panthers graphic. It's Matt Rule. It just seems like, Marcus, I know you've been saying I don't know that I would give him a young hotshot quarterback to work with. I know they haven't got that position right, but some of that has to fall on the head coach.
Yep. They're in year 3 of the Matt Rule rebuild, and they are in worse shape than they were when he took over. That's typically not a good sign of a good coach.
You almost want the Teddy Bridgewater Panthers back.
Oh yeah. They were more competitive than this team that we see. Yep.
Got the Minnesota Vikings with their new head coach up next. This might be a little unfair, but Marcus, our list, we're backloaded with a lot of the rookie head coaches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kevin O'Connell's tough because he's coming from the Sean McVay coaching tree, but we know Sean McVay calls the plays there. Not out on Kevin O'Connell at all. It's just, we have to wait and see.
So Houston Texans is one of our diversions from this. This is not a team with a rookie head coach. I should say it's Lovie Smith, in case you don't know who the Texans head coach is. And because I just realized I didn't even mention the Vikings head coach's name. I just said the Vikings head coach. That's when you're at 31. That's when I said, the Vikings head coach. Lovie Smith. Now, I lobbied for him to be a little bit higher than this, but Marcus presented his recent college football coaching. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Marcus, please.
Yeah, he's been a head coach in the NFL or in college for the last 7 years or 7 of the last 8 years, and they've never won more than 6 games, no matter where he's been, whether that's at Illinois, whether that's at Tampa Bay, or whether, Chicago at the end of the career. So I'm not buying Lovie Smith as a good coach in today's NFL.
I would just like to point out with Lovie Smith that he got the Bears to the playoffs several times. It was not a popular him leaving Chicago. I mean, they were 10-6 last year. Their defense was outstanding. They scored like 9 touchdowns on defense that year. I'm talking about the 2012 Bears. Mm-hmm. I think this is a little too low for him, but we'll talk about him juxtaposed with number 29, another veteran coach, Robert Sala. I thought we could have swapped these. I just didn't see a lot of improvement from the Jets last year. Not the way I saw from, say, the Lions. Are we being too hard here?
Maybe. I do think Sala is one of these up-and-coming head coaches that I'm really interested in, because I thought at the end of the season they were playing better. They nearly beat Tampa Bay. Was it Buffalo? The Bengals that they beat early in the season.
Yeah.
They were actually better when Zach Wilson didn't play. Like, if you give them a competent quarterback like Joe Flacco was, like they were pretty competitive. So I just want to see what they look like with Zach Wilson here in year 2.
Yeah, I'm curious about it too. They had a great draft. I think most people felt that way, and I'm curious to see what they can do as well. At 28, we've got one of our rookie head coaches, Nathaniel Hackett. His father had some pedigree in the NFL with the 49ers and Cowboys as a offensive assistant, offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. Nathaniel Hackett, I don't know what to think of this, but I will tell you this. I think Russell Wilson and the strength of that secondary could make him look really good.
Yeah, he's a tough one, because how do you rank the offensive coordinator for the Packers who doesn't call plays? Because it's Matt LaFleur. But I actually really like what he did in 2017 with Blake Bortles in Jacksonville. I thought that offense was pretty good, and they were good in the playoffs too, like against the Steelers and against the Patriots. They were able to find ways to move the ball. I'm optimistic about Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, I wonder if it could end up being Joe Philbin 2.0 sans a major franchise quarterback. Now, Philbin, I believe Tannehill was still the quarterback then when he took over. This may be unfair, but we're not going to be putting the rookie head coaches up near the top. So in that vein, we go to 27, Matt Eberflus. I liked the hire. I like the Bears hiring a defensive-minded guy because I kind of like that as the Bears culture. But in today's modern NFL, where there's so much player movement, I don't know that franchises have historical culture anymore. How do you think Matt Eberflus fits in there?
Yeah, this is a complicated one, and we talked about it when they hired him. But I thought the Bears needed to get somebody that they could tie together with Justin Fields for the next 3 or 4 years. They didn't do that, but I still like Eberflus. Like, his defenses have been good wherever he's gone. They play really fast. They're pretty physical. We'll see. Again, I just like Eberflus. I'm just not sure this is the best situation for him.
Yeah, it wasn't a great look for the Colts at the end of last year, losing to Jacksonville, although it seems like Carson Wentz and the offense shouldered a lot of that blame, not Eberflus's defense. I don't know that was totally fair. I'll say this. In terms of, like, how does someone fit in with the modern NFL, you were talking about another Bears coach, Lovie Smith. It used to be that if you hired a defensive coordinator to coach your team, you're not going to get rid of your most high-profile defensive player. And that's exactly what the Bears did with Khalil Mack. So, Akeem Hicks not there anymore either. I know he was getting older, but kind of an interesting setup. We'll see how he does. Atlanta Falcons at 26. We went with the veteran coach here, Arthur Smith. I think you wanted to put him a little higher than this, or no?
You tell me on Arthur Smith, because I have mixed feelings. Like, I love what he did with the Titans a couple years ago when he was the OC there. But I didn't really like anything I saw from them last year. So what do you think?
Well, I think you can say this in his favor. I mean, the game of both Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill really went up when he was there. I mean, Ryan Tannehill was known as, I don't want to call Ryan Tannehill a journeyman because that's not accurate, but I think he was looked at as a viable starter at best.
A low-end starter, right?
Yeah, and he became more than just a viable starter. He became a pretty effective starter, at least his first 2 years there. I know last year was not a great year for Ryan Tannehill, but look who wasn't there last year either, Arthur Smith. That said, Atlanta didn't look good last year, just plain and simple. And when you're the head coach, we can't just look at the offense. We've got to look at everything. and they were one of the weakest teams in the league. So I think there's more to be said there. Same with Dennis Allen, who takes over. That's our number 25 guy, New Orleans Saints. What Marcus and I liked about Dennis Allen is, number one, the Saints defense has been really good the last couple of years under his purview.
I mean, some of the games that they've had, like against star quarterbacks, have been incredible.
Stop talking. I want to speak for you. And then so they go, Marcus and I think like you're not even on the podcast.
That's all right. Go ahead.
But it's hard when you say to hold Dennis Allen's Raiders experience against him at this point, given where the Raiders were at that time.
Yeah, and that was so long ago. You're hoping that he kind of learned from how things went down there. I'm very optimistic about the Saints this year. I think they're going to be just fine with Dennis Allen. I really do.
You know, if memory serves, when Dennis Allen was with the Raiders, they were still trying to get out of camp purgatory and dead money, and they didn't really have the personnel that they kind of accumulated. And I'm talking about, Derek Carr developing, Amari Cooper drafting him, and Dennis Allen.
And he was really young as well. That's the other
thing.
He might have been too young to take that job.
And lastly, he's familiar with the team culture there. He's been there already. He's not taking over a new team in a new city where you've got to uproot your kids and all that kind of stuff. I think that all plays to his advantage. Let's go ahead and switch it and go to 24 here. That's our final 8, or second to last group of 8 here. Miami at 24. Okay, so Mike McDaniel, Marcus, I know you're super high on him, but he hasn't done anything yet. How do we gauge a guy like this? Because what he did in San Francisco was so unorthodox.
Yeah, man, my only concern about him at all is, what does the passing game look like in Miami? Not even talking about Tua, but because McDaniel's background is as a run coordinator, right? He was so good at designing the run game in San Francisco and a long time ago when he was in Denver. I wondered a little bit, like when they need to open up the offense, they need to get a 3rd and 11. Like, is he going to have complicated route combinations to get guys open? I don't know. But other than that, man, I think he's incredible. I think he's going to be a rising star in the league.
Well, one thing they can hang their hat on, a couple things he can hang his hat on. He had the best left tackle in football in San Francisco that he could always rely on. They did sign Teron Armstead, who may not be the best left tackle, but probably top 10. So you have him there in Miami. You can argue that if you want, if you don't think Armstead's top 10. But also Tyreek Hill, you can run jet sweeps. And then they signed Chase Edmonds, and I really like that. And then they grabbed a former 49er, Raheem Mostert, who you're hoping for a high ceiling. If not, you'll lean on Edmonds. But the one thing they don't have is they don't really have a Debo-like player. That's not Jalen Waddle. That's not Tyreek Hill. I don't think they're really going to be using Mike Gesicki in any kind of role like that. He's not really that kind of guy. So if you're expecting Debo 2.0, I wouldn't in Miami. Do you have any disagreement with that?
No, but he'll figure it out. He'll find a way to get the ball to his best players.
So the one hire that Marcus and I really liked a lot, and we didn't really have any debate about, brand new coaches, was Brian Dabal with the New York Giants. Did a great job in Buffalo. I think he's going to give Daniel Jones everything that he needs. And what I like here is you kind of find out what you've got. I think that's really what the Giants need to do with Daniel Jones anyway. And you've got a guy that's coming from a place where they developed a young quarterback and they overturned years of not having any success into great success. Buffalo didn't make the playoffs from 2000 to 2016. Not one time did they make the playoffs. So I really love this hire.
Yeah, as a Cowboy fan, this is the one that makes me really nervous, right? And we couldn't really rank him any higher than 23 because he hasn't been a head coach before. But it wouldn't shock me that when we're doing this show at this time next year, he's inside our top 12. Like, I just think he's that good. I think the Giants got a good one.
22, the Raiders got a veteran head coach, Josh McDaniels, who coached the Denver Broncos in 2009. And then he got fired, I want to say, was it 6 or 8 games into 2010? He's been with the Rams as an assistant. He's, of course, a longtime Belichick assistant. And then, of course, famously, he last minute reneged on the Colts job. This is an unusual hiring in that this guy is so famous for being an offensive coordinator. What do you think happens? Put on your prognosticator hat. I
think he's going to be really good. I just think people that are expecting them to win 11, 12, 13 games this year are going to be disappointed. Like, it's going to take some time for Dave Ziegler, the new front office, or the new GM, and Josh McDaniels to kind of build their culture and get their players in. I expect them to be competitive this year, but 2023 is the year where I think they'll be legitimate Super Bowl contenders.
Hey, I'm all for it. I think the Raiders are a really solid team right now. I like the acquisitions they had. Number 21 is Dan Campbell, the Lions. Now, I'm not in love with the Lions offseason or anything. I think the Lions had a nice draft, but we both kind of wanted to put Dan Campbell a little bit higher. It's just hard because the Lions weren't really any good, but they fought so hard last year with a team that was bottom 3 roster in the league for sure. You could make the argument, maybe even the worst roster in the league last year. They certainly were close to it. Make a case for Dan Campbell even higher than 21.
Yeah, so we have 20 coaches ranked higher than Campbell, but there's certainly not 20 coaches that would fit better in Detroit than Dan Campbell. Like, I think
players would want to play for.
Exactly. He is the exact type of coach that you need when you're going through a rebuild, right? Because that team played their butt off last year, and I think they started to build some positive momentum. I would be surprised this year if there's 7 to 8 wins, and then by the 2023 season is when we're really talking about them as a potential playoff team. But he's the exact type of leader, culture changer that they've been looking for, I mean, for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. I wouldn't have been totally opposed to putting him above Brandon Staley, who we have number 20 for the LA Chargers. Can kind of go both ways on him. There's things that you like. I like the way he's handled some questions. He also took a heck of a lot of risks last year, maybe too much, even for the analytics crowd. Mm-hmm. But this is kind of the year, man, because they have all the pieces. So if they don't make the playoffs, I think he's lower than 20.
Yeah, all in all, I think it was still a pretty good year for Brandon Staley. I thought the process that he used in a lot of his fourth down decisions and a lot of his game planning things were all really good. But they just got to be better at the end of these games, right? They've got to be able to get stops on defense. He's a defensive-minded head coach. You got to be able to slow teams down at least a little bit in the run game. I understand that he doesn't value the run game as much as most people do, but you can't be as bad as you were last year.
Yeah, his process was it's fourth down. Is it less than 19? Okay, we're going for it. All right, let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I'm moving you on from Brandon Staley. I can't have your deep dive analysis of fourth down analytics. I'm not letting you do it. I'm not going to do it. Actually, one of the things I admire about Staley is that he took some risks. But in my mind, the biggest risk you can take in any business that you're in is to look at the way you're doing things and say, you know what? I botched that deal. Mm-hmm. I'm going to change it up before I sink any more good money after bad. And I'm going to do things differently. And that's exactly what Nick Sirianni did midseason with Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. They utilized their strength, Marcus. They had a quarterback that was really scary with the ball in his hands, running, make the defense play everybody and run the ball a heck of a lot more. It set everything up better for them. Time of possession, set up their passing game better, gave their defensive pass rushers a little bit more rest on the sideline. Nick Sirianni, you can make the case, could be higher than this.
Yeah, I need you to talk about Nick because I'm a little biased here because he's kind of a family friend. So go ahead.
Well, I will say this also, that I realize it's only been 1 year, but I think that the organization has given him the tools that he needs. Will he be able to necessarily change back? I think that's a key too. When something starts working for you. So the way they approached it last year, it wasn't working and he changed it. But what about when something is working for you, but then you change it up just to keep your opponent on their heels? And I think that's going to be interesting because I don't know if we really know how good of thrower Jalen Hurts is. I mean, how many times have we seen the Eagles go out there and just wing it with Jalen Hurts? Even when they were throwing the ball early in the year, Marcus, a lot of it was safe stuff. And at some point, you got to let the kid let it rip, so to speak. Will Sirianni be willing to do that? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's a big year for the passing game. They've got to be better in that area. If not,
they made a big trade to make it better.
Yeah, I think we'll have some questions about the entire coaching staff after this year.
Also, I should mention year two of one of the best rookies in the league last year in Devontae Smith. That's often a big step forward. We'll see what happens there. Okay, number 18. This is one that we thought about going lower, especially my colleague here. Are we being unfair to Cliff Kingsbury?
I really like Cliff as a hire when the Cardinals first did this. I was really excited. I thought his offenses were really dynamic at Texas Tech. And I even thought the first couple of years, it was really exciting. But at the end of this trend of them falling off and just being so bad on offense in the second half of the season is really concerning. I kind of think this is the year where, I mean, they've got to get to the playoffs to win games or he might be gone.
Yeah, I think so too. And as we've talked about on our podcast before, they looked awful against the Rams in the playoffs. This wasn't a team that just, fell off at the end of the regular season and then, made a run in the playoffs or even made it interesting. There was nothing interesting about that Cardinals-Rams game.
Nope.
That was the biggest snoozer of the postseason for sure. Let's go to number 17, Tampa Bay. They expect to be back in the postseason. Might be an unusual spot given how much success they've had, but it's Todd Bowles. It's no longer Bruce Arians. I don't know if we're being unfair to Todd Bowles or not here. He's been a really good coordinator. I thought maybe we could have him higher. 2015, the Jets looked really good with him for most of the year. They fell apart against Buffalo, and then the next year they really fell apart. How do you gauge Todd Bowles at this point?
Yeah, I think we could have even had him higher. This was my second favorite hiring behind Brian Dabal with the Giants. I thought this was perfect for them, right? I think he's a no-nonsense head coach that the players love. He was already there. He's been successful. I think he's really, really good.
And, he was successful also as defensive coordinator with Arizona before he got the Jets gig with Bruce Arians. So I like the hire as well. Let's go. All right, now we're at the top half of the league here, albeit at the bottom end. Number 16, the Washington Commanders. It's Ron Rivera. He's a former Coach of the Year winner. He's taken a team to the Super Bowl. Marcus hates him. And other than that, he's doing a great job.
Yeah, it's fun. 16's a little high for me, but it's fine.
16 is high. It's middle of the pack.
What does he do well? What does he do well, Elliot?
I think he's a good voice for the organization. I think he's been a pretty good leader. I really liked. I'm just trying to highlight the positives here because you're challenging me. I can go negative if we need to.
No, it's just fine.
But year before last, Washington made the playoffs. Granted, they were 7-9, but they actually gave Tampa Bay the hardest time of any of the teams in the entire postseason, and they did it with Taylor Heineke. And I think when you're a head coach, one of the biggest jobs you have is to make sure that that train stays on the tracks when you're playing a backup or a guy that wasn't expected to be your starter. You got to keep everybody on the program motivated. And let's be honest, they had a lot of things go wrong. Marcus, they didn't get anything out of Chase Young, their best player, got hurt. They didn't get anything out of Curtis Samuel, who got hurt. And then obviously the quarterback position didn't work out. They thought they were going to have Ryan Fitzpatrick. That didn't work out. I don't know. Give him a chance.
What's that saying? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah. All right.
Kevin Stefanski at 15. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me how he's so much better than Ron Rivera. I'm ready.
I actually think Stefanski could be in the top 10. I think he's an incredible coach. No, I know last year the situation was not great. He's playing with different quarterbacks and a banged up quarterback, but I think his scheme is great. I think he relates well to players. That team won a playoff game despite like 30 players being on the COVID list against the Steelers in 2020. I just think he's really good.
Okay, if you juxtapose him with someone like Sean McVay, who's next on our list, just kidding. But if you juxtapose him with Sean McVay got a quarterback in Jared Goff to play really well, who didn't play well for Jeff Fisher and looked so-so with Detroit, okay? Kevin Stefanski didn't really get Baker Mayfield to play that well last year, and that all got put on Baker, even though Baker was hurt. Odell Beckham did not play well for Cleveland, and he goes to the Rams, and he's outstanding. Doesn't some of that land on Stefanski's shoulders? And I actually have a lot of respect for Stefanski, especially how they played the Raiders so tight late in the year with like half their team gone.
Yeah, and Nick Mullins, who was on the team for like 9 days, started and almost won that game. Yeah, I mean, this is I can't say this about a lot of these coaches, but it's a big year for Stefanski. Even if Deshaun Watson doesn't play, but I think they're going to be fine. I think he's got them in the right direction. Remember, where this team was after Hugh Jackson, after Freddie Kitchens, they got them to the playoffs and they won a playoff game and they were competitive last year. And they're still the favorites to win the AFC North this year. Like, just in a matter of 2 or 3 years, he's got this team to be competent on the field. That's a big step up.
I like, I don't know why whenever I say the word half, I say it like Bert and Ernie. Do you have any words like that you just literally don't sound like yourself when you use them? I don't know if you do. Another thing I love there about your analysis is I love it when someone gives analysis and they literally think of as many predecessors as they can. So you start naming the Browns.
Well, I mean, listen, Hugh Jackson is the worst record in the history of coaching. I mean, you take that and now you have a somewhat competitive team, a playoff contender for the last 3 years. It's not bad.
I know. I was just kind of waiting for you to be like, after Forrest Gregg, after Sam Rutigliano, after Marty Schottenheimer, after Bud Carson,
after Eric Mangini. Listen,
after Bill Belichick, after Butch Davis. Who am I missing? Chris Palmer.
Oh, who was the Packers defense coordinator now? Mike, what was his name?
Pettin.
Mike Patton.
Yeah. Wait, who was the Browns coach when they got back in the league in 99? It wasn't Butch Davis.
In 99? It was Chris Palmer. Chris Palmer, right?
It was Chris Palmer, right. Okay, and then it went to Butch Davis.
Then Terry Robisky, then Romeo Cornell.
Yeah, Butch Davis is the one that got him to the playoffs with their backup quarterback in 2002.
Yeah, Pat Shurmur in there a little bit. Remember him?
Yeah, Bruce Arians was coordinator. Tim Couch was the starter, and he got replaced by. All right, we're going way too.
Rob Chudzinski. Yep, keep going. Let's move on to the next team.
Colts. Frank Reich. I think this is the right spot for Frank Reich. Kind of near the middle of the pack. I think he's done some nice things, but again, you can't put that entire debacle, the last game of the season against the Jags, on the quarterback Carson Wentz. Some of that's got to fall on Frank Reich. I think he's got a team to go deep in the playoffs. They need to make the playoffs this year.
And I'll go one step further. If they don't win multiple playoff games, I think you could move on from Frank Reich. I really do. They just have not been successful at all in the playoffs. I think they've been a little bit underwhelming considering the talent level. I think he needs to win playoff games to keep his job.
The only way I would say no on that is if they get a bye and they win the divisional round and they lose the AFC Championship, then no. But otherwise, I pretty much agree.
We're going into year 5 right now, and he's got one playoff win. All
right, calm down. That's right. And that was in his first year when they beat Houston in the wild card with Andrew Luck. And then they went to Kansas City and got beat. Okay, Zach Taylor for the Cincinnati Bengals. Maybe a hair unfair that we have him this low, given that he got the Bengals or partially got the Bengals to the Super Bowl. But 2 pretty underwhelming seasons before that. So I think we're both kind of taking a wait and see approach.
Yeah, I thought last year there was times where he was a little too conservative considering the talent that he had on offense. But when you go 10-7 and you win multiple playoff games, you got to rank him high. But again, he was 6-25 going into last season.
I need to quit hitting my table here because it shakes the camera. And that's what they used to do on the Star Trek. Whenever the ship would get hit by something, they would just shake the camera and everyone would act like they're bracing. Yeah, it's really great. All right. Jacksonville at 12 because of Doug Peterson. I'm so not used to having Jacksonville anywhere near the top of our ranking ever that I have to just say Jacksonville at 12. But we put Doug Peterson here kind of in honor of what he did in Philadelphia. They had the Super Bowl run. The next year they came back. Carson Wentz was hurt, didn't play that well. Nick Foles gets in late in the year. They go on a run. They could have very easily beaten the Saints in the divisional round that year, had an Alshon Jeffrey drop. Not a great end to Doug Peterson's tenure in Philadelphia, but there was a lot of questions about what was going on between management and him late in the year. Are we too high on him, though? Given the way his tenure ended.
Yeah, I think we might be a little bit too high on him. Only 1 year in his career, his team has had more than 9 wins in a season. I think he obviously gets a lot of credit for that Super Bowl run, but the rest of his career has been very, feels a little high.
Well, you can say this. You can say this about Doug Peterson. The Eagles were not in a good spot when he took over for Chip Kelly. The other thing, too, is he got the best play out of Carson Wentz.
Well, hold on. That was the argument that I used for Kevin Stefanski, and you poo-pooed it. So I just want to be clear here what you're doing.
Because I enjoy poo-pooing things, including the next one that I was not as high on this guy. This is more of a Marcus Mosher special with a side of pancakes and cinnamon rolls, although you can't get cinnamon rolls in L.A. If you want to go back to our previous conversation.
Shocking.
So frustrating. Well, not good ones anyway. Mike McCarthy at 11, too high. This is what I will say is too high.
Why?
Really?
I mean,
where do you want me to start?
Go wherever you want to.
Okay. When is the last time Mike McCarthy won a really significant postseason game?
I mean, okay, keep going.
Okay, number 2. And this is my biggest argument, and you know where I'm going with this. Multiple times last year, I saw him address his team at least twice. I'm using multiple in place of twice. It's my prerogative as the host. That he blamed the refs partially for the Cowboys not playing well. And I've never known a good coach in my life that's ever done that multiple times. I remember one time seeing Jimmy Johnson say to reporters that it was the worst officiated game he'd ever been a part of. But the first thing he said is, "We lost the game. We lost." Then he said, "It was also the worst officiated game I've ever seen." That's my biggest problem with Mike McCarthy. And I also give more credit to the coordinators. So if you want to give credit to Mike McCarthy for hiring those coordinators, okay, cool.
Yeah. Mike McCarthy has 9 seasons of double-digit wins. They did win multiple playoff games in 2016.
Okay, you want to review the personnel of the 2016 Packers?
But hold on. No, I don't want to do that. He's got a career winning percentage of 60%. Like, if you have Mike McCarthy as your coach, pretty good bet that you're going to win 10 games every season.
I'm not saying he's a bad coach.
Yeah,
what's hysterical to me is that Ted Thompson used to get bashed. And Ted Thompson did more for those Packers teams, I think, than Mike McCarthy did.
How many teams would sign up right now if I told you, hey, you're going to go 10-7 every year that you have this coach? How many teams would sign up for that?
Yes, if there was a little asterisk at the bottom of that said, with Aaron Rodgers in tow. Oh, sorry. Seattle Seahawks at number 10. Pete Carroll. This one you could make an argument to go higher or lower. It hasn't been great the last couple of years. I feel like Pete Carroll's the luster of his career is dimmed a little bit, or you wouldn't say a luster is dimmed. It has been muddied. I don't know.
Sure.
Scuffed, dirtied. How do we look at Pete Carroll right now? I mean, first of all, I think Pete Carroll's headed to the Hall of Fame. I do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It should.
But if we're talking about here and now, a James Ingram song from the 80s, I don't know that Pete Carroll belongs in the top 10.
Yeah, this one's tough because what he did earlier in his career, like in the early 2010s with Seattle, was incredible. But the last couple of years, he's kind of looked like a dinosaur in the NFL with some of his philosophies and team building stuff. And it's kind of torpedoed that franchise into a bad spot where, I mean, they're one of the 3 least talented teams in the league going into the season. And a lot it's because of the way that they've wanted to build their team. So I think we're putting him here based on what he's done in the past. But there's 15, 20 coaches that I would take over him going into this season if I just needed to win one game.
You know, I think before August hits, we should do a Tuesday pod where we rank the rosters because I think Seattle might be parked at 32. They're going to be really close to it.
Atlanta and Seattle pulling up that final spot, right?
It's probably, I mean, Carolina's not going to be that far behind. I mean, we could.
We'll do that.
We should do a pod on that. But in terms of Pete Carroll, he's a hard guy to gauge. But what I will say is one indication of a good head coach is how hard his team plays for him. Seattle plays hard. I mean, how often do you see Seattle get blown out by anybody? We were even saying the other day on our podcast, they're probably going to be good for 7 wins this year just because. And that comes down to organizational culture, which we talk about with the Ravens a lot. And I think Seattle has had it in spades, really, for a while now, that they have been more competitive than they should be at times. So, like I said, a difficult one to rank. I should mention, if I'm saying we're too high on Pete Carroll and Mike McCarthy and Doug Peterson and Kevin Stefanski, then who would move up in their place? And maybe Zach Taylor would be one that should have been a little higher on this list.
This is why we think like Zach Taylor and Brian Dabal and Mike Mcdaniel and Josh McDaniels could all rise up this list pretty quickly by the end of the season.
Maybe even, hey, I'm going to give a small little vote for Dennis Allen here.
Sure.
And also Todd Bowles, who we mentioned. Number 9. So Matt LaFleur for Green Bay, great start to his career. What are you smirking about?
This is one I think we're a little too high on, but go ahead.
Okay. I thought I called him Greg Kittle or something the way you were smirking. So how do you rank him lower, though? I mean, if you're going to say Mike McCarthy belongs where he does, how can we say LaFleur belongs lower? Because LaFleur is more successful over the last few years than McCarthy's been.
But your argument for McCarthy is, well, what has he done in the playoffs? What has Matt LaFleur done in the playoffs? They've been the number one seed in each of the last 3 years, and they've lost at home. They've fallen on their face, and they've been awful in some of these playoff games. Like the offensive display that they had against San Francisco was horrendous. Right?
It was.
I mean, I know the regular season's record's really good, but when we're getting inside the top 10, you better be able to do something in the playoffs when you're at home in every game.
No, that's fair. It's kind of interesting, though, because you don't really hold the 49ers loss against Mike McCarthy, and we know you don't hold the 49ers loss against the Cowboys quarterback. We've already established that.
It's not. I'm talking about when you're the number one seed and you got 2 weeks to prepare and your offense puts up 10 points.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys had every advantage that Green Bay had at home, quite frankly. But,
I mean, you've got Green Bay where you're used to playing in the cold weather for a West Coast team, and you put up 10 points.
Hey, I'm fine with blaming LaFleur for that, and I'm fine if you don't want to blame McCarthy. But then what about the quarterbacks?
Okay, well, what about Aaron Rodgers? Has Aaron Rodgers played well?
Right.
I know. I'm just.
And people said Aaron Rodgers played bad against San Francisco, but people don't want to say that about somebody else. Who?
I've said that Dak did not play well, but go ahead. Let's get to the top 8.
I can't. Ben DiNucci? No, not him.
He's got a new clothing line out, by the way.
Anthony Wright. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Courtney. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Now that we've launched off of Marcus's bias, let's launch into another one. Marcus doesn't really like the Bills. So for him to give Sean McDermott even this nod, I mean, you think they're a good team. You just kind of root against them, I've noticed. So Sean McDermott, another guy I think we could have maybe had a spot or two higher.
I like the Bills. I love Sean McDermott. I think he's a really good coach. I think he's gotten that team to play well above their heads. Let's just think the quarterback can be a little bit overrated at times, but I mean, in his 5 years with Buffalo, 4 winning seasons, last 3 years, they've won double-digit games. I think he's very good.
You bet. They got in the playoffs his first year, 2017. They needed a little help at the end of the year from, Tyler Boyd, I believe, on a fourth down, and they got it. And they lost to Jacksonville. And then in 2018, when they didn't make the playoffs, I was like, oh, no, was that just an aberration? Clearly not, because they've been really, really competitive. Obviously, the quarterback position is a big part of it. I am a little concerned about Brian Dabal leaving and then having Ken Dorsey in his spot. But Ken Dorsey was the QB coach there, and I trust Sean McDermott at this point, given his track record.
I agree.
Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin at number 7. Another guy that elicits a lot of different responses. Another guy that Marcus bags on, and then we start doing this, and you wanted to put him in the top 5. So I think you just get tired of a stat with Mike Tomlin. Is that fair?
Yeah, I could care less about how many straight non-losing seasons he's had, because that's not the goal, Elliot. Yeah. Since 2011, they've won 3 playoff games, and that's with having a really good defense and having maybe a Hall of Fame quarterback and having some good receivers. Like, they just don't win in the playoffs very often. In the last couple of years, 9-8, 12 wins in 2020, and then 9 wins in 2021. And then they get blown off the field in the playoffs against much lesser quarterbacks like Bortles, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes. They gave up 49 points to. I don't know.
I like that much lesser quarterbacks, and you
except for him. I was thinking,
Mahomes.
Listen, they gave up 42 to Bortles. Was it 45 to Baker Mayfield and 49 to Patrick Mahomes?
I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
So was it the 2016 AFC Championship that they played at New England, and they just won?
Yeah, 2016. No, they didn't.
2016 season.
Yeah, 2016 season, yes.
And, they've got Antonio Brown at the height of his game. They've got Ben Roethlisberger, who wasn't great, but was still a viable quarterback, obviously. And they got Le'Veon Bell at the height of his game, and they laid an egg. I don't even remember that game being competitive.
It was long. Going into the final 3 minutes of that game, it was 36-9.
Yeah. To me, that's the game that I circle that for Pittsburgh.
Can I give you one more thing?
Sure.
Since 2011, here are the quarterbacks the Steelers have beaten in the playoffs. Matt Moore, who was backing up Ryan Tannehill against the Dolphins. Alex Smith, kind of at the end of his career with the Chiefs. And then, can you name the other one?
The 3 quarterbacks the Steelers have beaten in the playoffs since 2011.
Mm-hmm. Matt Moore.
Yeah, I remember Alex that. Moore, Miami. Yep. And then
Alex Smith. AJ McCarron, and they should have lost that.
Give me a chance.
Well,
I was going through my divisions.
That's right. AJ McCarron, and they should have lost that game.
They should have lost that game. They doggone right. They should have lost that game.
It's just really not impressive resume for Tomlin.
The only impressive win I would say out of that group, the Kansas City win was pretty impressive. Kansas City had a good team that year. I think that was 2016 also.
Mm-hmm. It was.
And wasn't that the Eric Fisher putting James Harrison basically holding him around the helmet
on a 2-point conversion that would have tied the game.
Yep. Okay, let's go to number 6. Speaking of the Patriots, former Patriots, maybe not great, but very good player, Mike Vrabel. This is one of Marcus's favorite coaches in the league, if not your favorite. Did you want to put Mike Vrabel a little higher than this?
Yeah, I did. I think I might have put him at number 5, but this is a good spot for him. I love Vrabel. What he did with that team last year, considering all the injuries they had in the secondary, Derrick Henry getting hurt, A.J. Brown battling through injuries. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC, and I know they laid an egg, but my goodness, that team fought like crazy.
And they didn't lay a huge egg. That was a really close game against a team that proved itself worthy. And, if it weren't for a couple horrible calls, maybe would have won the Super Bowl. Ryan Tannehill didn't play particularly well. The offensive line did not play particularly well, very inconsistent. They didn't really get anything out of the wide receiver position outside of A.J. Brown. It seemed like everything that could go wrong did. But when you're a great coach, you get other areas of your team to elevate when another group is not playing well. So if it's got to be the special teams, if it's the defense, whatever it is, they were able to do that. And so I give him a lot of credit. And his players seem to really play for him. So I'm with you there. I wanted Kyle Shanahan at number 5. I think Marcus would have swapped these. Mm-hmm. Why would you swap them? And what do you like about Kyle Shanahan?
I mean, I think Kyle Shanahan's one of the smartest offensive-minded coaches in the league. It's just it hasn't always resulted in wins. He's got a career record of 39-42 as a coach. I know the first couple of years they really struggled to even find a competent quarterback, but still, I think there's too many regular season games where they kind of no-show. But still, his offenses are so dynamic. They get into the playoffs and they win games. He's come so close as an offensive coordinator and as a head coach to winning Super Bowls that you have to have him high.
I mean, to me, they had no business being in the NFC Championship game last year. The opponents, the quality of opponents they beat, Dallas, there's nothing fluky about that game.
Yep.
The end of the game sequences is so famous. That was a desperation drive.
Oh, yeah. They kicked Dallas's butt, no doubt.
And then and they play the style of football, Marcus, where they're not going to win a lot of games 48-10.
Nope.
They're not trying to track meet you. They're getting ahead 23-7 on you, and they're running the ball and they're playing clock ball on you, and they're not going to make any mistakes to give you chances. That can be just as demoralizing as a 40-10 loss. 2019, they get the top seed by going into Seattle and beating Seattle at their place, and they make it all the way to the Super Bowl. And if it wasn't for some very mediocre play from the quarterback in the fourth quarter, they probably win that game. Any disagreement?
Nope, not at all. I think this is a good spot for him.
Yeah. Okay. Number 4 is John Harbaugh. Marcus officially back in on Ravens culture. You wanted this in a cleanup spot, and I agreed. We talked about this one for literally 2 seconds.
Yep. He's got 8 seasons of double-digit wins or more. His worst season ever was in 2015, where they had 5 wins. Other than that, 8 wins or more in every season. I just think they're so disciplined. They're really good on special teams. They've got a brand of football that they want to play. It's tough to put them lower than 4.
They've had a ton of bad luck with injuries. Them and the Chargers have probably had the most guys go, on IR or out for the season over the last 5 or 6 years.
And tough luck in tough luck in the playoffs too, with like Derek Mason dropping that ball in the end zone, right?
Oh, the Billy Cundiff miss from 32 in the 2011 AFC Championship. That year, 2015, I think they set an NFL record that year for most one-score losses or something like that. They were not bad. And then also good out of the gate. His first year in Baltimore, they went all the way to the AFC Championship game, and at Heinz Field, they played a really good Pittsburgh team that year, and they did it with a rookie quarterback, a rookie head coach, and a rookie quarterback. Pretty doggone impressive. Number 3, Sean McVay, Los Angeles Rams. You could argue for him higher. We've talked about whether or not he's overrated. Is he maybe underrated? Does he deserve to be number 1?
I don't know if you can go number 1 yet, but man, number 2, maybe. I mean, his worst season ever was 9-7 in 2019. Won a Super Bowl, was a couple plays away from winning another Super Bowl. He's done it with multiple quarterbacks. He's only 35 years old. I just think he's amazing. Plus, he has total control over that team. Like, he helps call plays on defense. He runs the offense. He calls plays. I mean, he's really everything you would want in a head coach.
Everything is form fitting. Ben Sherman shirts won't fit. That's for sure. You know what I'm doing today that you've pointed out Sean McVay would never do? Remember when we saw the coaches picture, where they take the league meetings and you were talking about Sean McVay's outfit?
Yep.
I'm wearing white sneakers right now that are like, they're all dirty.
Oh,
Sean
never.
McVay would never be caught. No. The Izod would be perfect. The little alligator would be perfectly clean.
Although I don't really know if Sean McVay, like outside of a football setting, is a sneaker guy. He's probably more of a flip-flop guy. I can kind of see, just kind of that's the vibe I get from Sean McVay, but still number 3.
Flip-flop, but more like $165 leather.
Oh yeah. Like we're talking like Gucci flip-flops.
Like,
yeah.
We're talking about flip-flop guy. Now, Andy Reid, our number 2, is a flip-flop guy. I guarantee it. Andy Reid's probably wearing cargo shorts with a Hawaiian shirt and true flip-flops right now. The old school ones, the ones with the black bottoms, and they just have like the color stem, and that's it. That's all you get, This was pretty easy for us as well. I don't think we need to rehash Andy Reid's entire career. Took Philadelphia job in 99 and had incredible success ever since then. Really only one bad year, 2012, his last year in Philly. But I said we wouldn't rehash his career, and I just did it in like 12 seconds. But I think this year is going to be a real litmus test for him, because with Tyreek Hill gone, that offense doesn't quite have the same dimension that it did. And with Tyrann Mathieu gone, who's kind of a leader on defense, I don't know. Do they slip back to the pack? Are they a 10-7 ball club, especially in that division?
No, because that's really never been Andy Reid. Do you realize that he's been in Kansas City for 9 years now? It's kind of hard to believe. And his worst season ever was 9-7.
2013, right?
2014. 2014. Yeah. 2013, they were 11-5.
Excuse me.
They'll be fine. He's so good. And he's got this team so locked in that they're going to win 12 games, even though the schedule is incredibly tough. They don't have Tyreek Hill. It's just what he does. They're going to go 12-5, 13-4, and be just fine.
I give him a lot of credit for resilience too. That 2016 loss to the Steelers in the playoffs, that was a rough loss. The one on the 2-point play. Then the next year they were the top seed, or they had a home game, and Tennessee went in there and beat them, shocked them. And then the next year they lost when Dee Ford lined up in the neutral zone. Those were tough losses to get over, and they did, and they won the Super Bowl. And it's certainly not all in the quarterback. Not to mention, Alex Smith's last year in Kansas City led the league in passer rating. To bail on Alex Smith, and with respect, but then go to Patrick Mahomes, that took some guts, man.
Yep. He's incredible. He's an awesome coach. And if I was choosing a coach to coach my team, probably would be Andy Reid, because I think players absolutely love to play for him, but he's not the best coach in the league, because that guy is set number 1 for us.
Yeah. So Bill Belichick, what I'll say here, I know that Bill Belichick is known for his Patriots dynasty and stuff, but if we go beyond that for a moment, for the New York Giants, Bill Belichick was a great assistant coach. He was there for 12 years. He was their special teams coach and really good at it. That's how he got promoted to defensive coordinator in 1985. 86, their defense leads them to the Super Bowl. 1990, his last year in New York, they faced one of the best offenses ever in Super Bowl history, and they shut them down. They won that game 20-19. The defensive game plan that Bill Belichick put together to stop the Bills is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame because it was so impressive at the time. So you have that. Then people look at the Cleveland era. He did get Cleveland to the playoffs in 94. And in 95, Art Modell announced in the middle of the year that they were going to go to Baltimore. Well, that's going to derail any team with that hanging over your head. And so sometimes I feel like his Cleveland tenure is not really looked at fairly. Everybody knows the New England history. And lastly, I would say I thought he did a really nice job with Mac Jones. I know they faltered a little bit at the end of the year, but they were in the hunt the whole year.
How many times do you think his defenses as a head coach or a defensive coordinator have finished inside the top 2 in points per game?
Well, they did at least 3 times when he's with the Giants. I'll go once with Cleveland. That's 4. And I'm going to go another at least 5 times with New England. So I'll go 9.
12 times his defense has been inside the top 2. 12
I thought it was
times. The worst season he's ever had was 1995 when they were 20th in points per game. He's never been worse than that.
Bro, that's the year. That's the year that Art Modell announced in, I want to say early November, that they were moving to Baltimore, and it derailed that team. They were at one point, that Browns team, I think, was like 4-3. If you look at the 95 Browns and look where they finished, that's what happened. They were a pretty strong team in 94.
One last thing. 17 seasons his defenses have finished inside the top 5 in points per game.
That's unbelievable. That's
17 times.
I mean, really. And he's done it. Wasn't one of those years with Cleveland, the 94 team?
Yep. 1994, they finished number 1. Yep.
Yeah. So in points per game or yards?
In points per game. He did it. He finished first in points per game 3 different times with New England, once with Cleveland and once with the Giants.
All right. Trivia for you. No looking. Who was Bill Belichick's defensive coordinator on that 94 Browns team?
Saban.
That is correct. Nick Saban with some big Van Heusen glasses. Totally not the slick Nick Saban now. These were like your mom's accountant's glasses.
Yep.
By the way, have you noticed, when did my voice get like Tony Romo's?
I think that's a good sign that the podcast will probably need to wrap up, right?
Yeah, exactly. I am. It's been the last few weeks. I apologize if I have not been a good listen to everybody. I don't know why my voice is just giving out so much. I think too many phone calls. That's probably the deal. But that's our list. You want to just rehash it real quick? 32 down to 1.
Sure, that's not a problem at all. At number 32, we've got our guy Matt Rule. 31, Kevin O'Connell. 30, Levy Smith. 29, Robert Sala. 28, Nathaniel Hackett. 27, Matt Eberflus. 26, Arthur Smith. 25, Dennis Allen. 24, Mike McDaniel. 23, Brian Dabal. 22, Josh McDaniels. 21, Dan Campbell. 20, Brandon Staley. 19, Nick Sirianni. 18, Cliff Kingsbury. 17, Todd Bowles. 16, your guy, Ron Rivera. At number 15, my guy, Kevin Stefanski. Frank Wright at 14. Zach Taylor at 13. Doug Peterson at 12. Mike McCarthy, criminally underrated at number 11. Pete Carroll at 10. Matt LaFleur at 9. Sean McDermott at 8. Mike Tomlin at 7. Mike Vrabel at 6. Kyle Shanahan at 5. John Harbaugh at 4. Sean McVay at 3. Andy Reid at 2. And, of course, Bill Belichick at number 1.
I will say the guy I'm probably the most curious about this year, just because he hasn't been talked about very much, is Dennis Allen. I don't think we've talked about very much that Sean Payton has been there for 16 years. It'll be really interesting to see if they're a playoff team or not. But as always, I give you the last word.
I always like to look ahead to who could be the next great head coach and who's a guy that could be, a hot name in the cycle, the coaching cycle next year. I'm keeping an eye on Ken Dorsey. who is now the offensive coordinator in Buffalo. I want to see how he does, try to replicate that Brian Dabal offense. It sounds like Dorsey was the guy that Josh Allen really connected with when he was there. If he has a really good season, don't be surprised if Ken Dorsey's a head coach next year.
It's a hot take. It's a real hot take. Fresh out of the oven. You can get more of those if you listen to Locked On Cowboys. You can get hot takes on who's going to be the backup weak side linebacker in training camp.
Probably Devin Harper.
I know. I feel for you and Landon because it has got to be it's so thin right now, in June. It's just that time of year in the NFL. So, but they do a great job over there. Give Landon a follow as well as Marcus. And then also he covers the Raiders for USA Today. I'm at Harrison NFL on Twitter. We thank Courtney and Eric and Herbert and all the good folks at Brinks. And we will see you guys later. We do our free flowing podcast on Friday, maybe Thursday. I have to figure it out with Mr. Lazy over here. Okay, talk to y'all later. Bye.